Have you ever paused and wondered when exactly the dynamic with your own children began to shift? One day, you're the center of their universe, cooking their meals, helping with homework, healing every scraped knee with a reassuring hug. And then gradually, you sense a change. Your advice seems to go in one ear and out the other. Your phone calls become shorter, less frequent, and sometimes feel like an inconvenience to them. You try to share your perspective or offer guidance, but they brush you off, roll their eyes, or simply ignore what you say. It's painful, isn't it? Maybe you've told yourself that they're just busy with their own families or careers. Maybe you've tried to keep the peace by staying silent. Or perhaps you've tried confronting them, reminding them of all the years you spent raising them with patience and love. Yet nothing seems to shift their attitude. They remain distant, dismissive, or even openly critical. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone, and there's a way forward that doesn't involve shouting matches or ultimatums. In fact, you might be surprised at how differently they could treat you once you embrace a few subtle yet transformative principles. Stay with me through this entire discussion, because I'm going to reveal 6 deeply effective steps that can help you regain not just the respect of your adult children, but also a sense of peace and dignity in your own life. Each step is simple in concept, but remarkably powerful in practice. And once you put them into motion, you may see real, lasting changes in how your children speak to you, listen to you, and interact with you. Step 1. Release the need for their constant approval. Let's begin by addressing one of the most common traps loving parents fall into: bending over backward in pursuit of a nod, a smile, or a thank you from their adult children. Because you cherish them so much, you want to stay involved. You might call them more often than they call you, offer to run errands for them, or watch the grandchildren whenever asked, all the while hoping they'll notice and say, "Wow, mom or dad, you're amazing. We appreciate everything you do." But here's the hard truth. Constantly seeking validation can actually backfire. When your grown children sense that you're desperate for a crumb of their approval, they may unconsciously lose respect for you. It's not that they're ungrateful by nature. Rather, they become accustomed to your overgiving and start viewing it as the normal state of affairs. They might assume you'll always be at their beck and call, no matter how they treat you, simply because you fear losing their affection. The more you chase approval, the more it slips away. Respect isn't gained through self-sacrifice, it's earned through self-respect. And that begins with setting healthy boundaries, deciding how much you're willing to give before feeling depleted, and sticking to those limits with quiet confidence. When you show them that you value your time and energy, that you are willing to say no without guilt, they'll recognize you as an individual with a life of your own. And ironically, this makes your presence more meaningful to them. Before you think, "But they need my help." Of course, providing help in times of genuine need is an act of love. The key difference is in your motive and the way you deliver it. If your support is always tinged with unspoken expectations, "I hope they'll finally see how much I do," you set yourself up for disappointment. But if you give from a place of self-respect, balancing your well-being with theirs, they're more likely to appreciate it genuinely. Step 2. Avoid arguments. Demonstrate calm authority instead. There's a familiar saying, "Never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it." While that might sound a bit tongue-in-cheek, it serves as a reminder that heated arguments rarely change hearts. Think back to the last time you tried to argue someone into respecting your opinion. Did it work, or did it simply escalate tensions? When your adult children speak in a sharp or dismissive tone, your immediate reflex may be to fight back. Perhaps you remind them of all your sacrifices and how much they owe you. But let's be frank, forced respect doesn't last. It either fades once the confrontation ends, or it poisons the relationship with resentment on both sides. A more powerful way to handle disrespect is to maintain a steady composure and speak your truth calmly. Say, for instance, your daughter interrupts you or dismisses your viewpoint. Instead of shouting or delivering a speech about how you've been the perfect parent, take a breath and respond. "I hear what you're saying, but I'd like to finish my thought. I value respectful communication." If they continue, you can politely excuse yourself, making it clear you won't engage in a conversation filled with interruptions or put-downs. Leading by example is far more persuasive than trying to coerce compliance. When you consistently demonstrate poise and self-respect, your children will eventually notice. They may test you, pushing your buttons to see if you'll revert to old patterns. But once they realize you're unwavering, they'll adjust their behavior if they want to keep a relationship with you. Respect is often a byproduct of seeing someone who doesn't waver or crumble in the face of conflict. This doesn't mean you never speak up. By all means, address serious issues. Let them know in a calm and firm manner that you have standards for how you wish to be treated. If your tone remains measured and you never resort to insults or yelling, your stance becomes incredibly powerful. Consistency in this case is your ally. Over time, your adult children will learn that crossing certain lines simply doesn't work with you anymore. Step 3. Detach your sense of worth from their affection. As a parent, you probably spent decades nurturing, teaching, and guiding your children. It's only natural to feel a deep bond. But here's a challenging reality. Once your kids grow up, they begin to form their own identities, sometimes at the cost of distancing themselves from you. If your sense of self-worth is wrapped up in how often they call or how warmly they greet you, you set yourself up for emotional turmoil. When your happiness hinges on their attention, you might text them repeatedly or call them every day just to feel close. And if they don't respond the way you hope, you end up feeling rejected or unloved. Over time, they might see your frequent contact not as care, but as neediness, making them even more distant. To rebuild genuine respect, it's crucial to carve out an identity that doesn't revolve around waiting for your children's validation. Think back to your earlier years. Did you have passions, hobbies, or friends that brought you joy outside of parenthood? It's never too late to rekindle those interests. Or maybe there's something new you've always wanted to learn: painting, playing an instrument, traveling, volunteering. When you invest time and energy in fulfilling activities, you project a sense of wholeness that others, including your children, can't help but admire. Paradoxically, detaching your self-esteem from your children's reactions can actually draw them closer. When they see that you're not chasing after them for your emotional needs, they become more inclined to keep in touch and show you genuine warmth, because they don't feel pressured or guilted into it. It might feel unfamiliar at first, perhaps even lonely, to shift from dependency to independence. Yet the long-term payoff is not just respect from your adult children, but also a richer, more satisfying life for yourself. By cultivating a sense of personal fulfillment, you model healthy adulthood even in your later years, which can inspire them more powerfully than 1,000 words ever could. Step 4. Set clear boundaries and enforce them consistently. Some parents worry that setting boundaries will push their children away. They fear that if they say no to certain requests or behaviors, their adult kids might stop visiting altogether. But think of it this way: real respect flourishes when people understand and honor each other's limits. If you never establish clear boundaries, you can't expect others to respect them. Let's say your son habitually speaks to you in a rude or condescending manner. You've tolerated it so far, telling yourself, he's under stress, or he doesn't really mean it. But each time you overlook the disrespect, you're inadvertently signaling that it's acceptable. Over time, it may get worse, not better. To change this, decide on a boundary. For instance, I will not be spoken to with insults or shouting. Communicate this boundary calmly in a moment of relative peace, rather than in the heat of an argument. You might say, I love you and value our relationship, but I won't stay in a conversation where I'm insulted. If it happens, I'll leave or ask you to leave. The key is following through. If he crosses that line, gently but firmly disengage. This might shock him at first. He may accuse you of being overly sensitive or dramatic, but you're not doing this out of spite. You're protecting your emotional well-being and teaching him that respect is non-negotiable. Remember, boundaries are not walls to keep your children out. They're guardrails that keep your relationship healthy. They preserve mutual respect and protect you from emotional harm. Over time, even if there's initial resistance, most adult children adjust their behavior because they realize the relationship depends on it. They also come to respect a parent who respects himself. Consistency is everything here. Don't set a boundary if you're unwilling to enforce it. Empty threats do more harm than good. Each time you follow through on what you've stated, you reinforce to both yourself and your children that you mean what you say. This newfound confidence often translates into improved interactions, because clarity and consistency breed stability. Step 5. Taper off excessive giving and foster mutual appreciation. You've likely given years of unconditional love, financial support, and hands-on assistance to your children. That's a natural part of parenting. But once they're adults, the dynamic shifts. If you continue to give finances, time, energy, without any pause or request for mutual courtesy, there's a risk they'll grow to expect it as a given. This sense of entitlement can erode the respect they hold for you. There is a stark difference between generosity and overextension. Generosity flows from genuine goodwill and is met with gratitude. Overextension, on the other hand, happens when you give more than you're comfortable giving, perhaps hoping for appreciation that never comes. When your giving goes unappreciated, it can lead to feelings of resentment or feeling used. Imagine you're always ready to babysit their kids at a moment's notice, lend them money whenever they ask, or solve their daily problems without them making any effort. While you might do it out of love, your children can become complacent. They start to take it for granted, and the word thanks becomes less frequent. So what's the solution? It's not necessarily to stop helping altogether, but to be discerning about how and when you help. If your children genuinely need assistance, and it's within your capacity to do so without neglecting your own life, by all means offer it. But if they've come to expect you to bend over backward every time they snap their fingers, it's time to create balance. One approach is to politely ask them to contribute. For instance, if you're providing dinner every week, propose alternating nights. One week at your place, the next at theirs. Or if they want you to drive them somewhere regularly, suggest they pitch in for gas or take turns driving. These aren't petty demands. They're ways to foster mutual respect. By showing that your time and resources aren't infinite, you encourage them to value what you do. And yes, they might initially complain or push back. But over time, they'll realize that you have your own needs and that your support is a generous gift, not an obligation. When children see that you respect your own energy and resources, they'll be more likely to do the same. This small shift can reignite genuine gratitude and transform the relationship from one of expectation to one of appreciation. Step 6. Cultivate a fulfilling life beyond your role as a parent. Perhaps the most surprising yet powerful strategy is to shift your focus from them to you. When children perceive that your entire sense of purpose revolves around their presence, they may feel burdened by the weight of your expectations. Or worse, they may not even realize you're expecting anything because you never express your own desires or engage in personal pursuits. To command genuine respect, show your children, through actions, not just words, that you have a vibrant life of your own. This doesn't mean ignoring them. It means pursuing interests that have nothing to do with them. Maybe you've always wanted to learn pottery, start a small garden, join a reading club, or take a road trip with close friends. By investing in activities that nurture your heart and mind, you demonstrate that your life has many dimensions. When your children see you engaged in hobbies, community work, or social events, they begin to understand that you're not simply sitting by the phone, waiting for their call. You're an individual with passions and goals. This realization can trigger a newfound admiration for you because you're living on your own terms. And in many cases, it prompts them to reach out more. They're curious about your activities. They realize you're not entirely dependent on them for emotional support, and this can lead them to initiate more respectful interactions. Having your own pursuits also keeps you mentally and emotionally stimulated. It helps guard against loneliness and depression, which sometimes creep into the lives of older adults who place all their happiness in the hands of their children. By actively creating a sense of purpose and community, you protect your own well-being. Ultimately, you'll feel more content and self-assured, regardless of how your children behave. A final word on rebuilding respect. Respect, at its core, stems from recognizing another person's integrity and individuality. Your children as adults need to see you as a person in your own right. Yes, you are their parent, but you're also someone with values, interests, and limits that deserve acknowledgement. If they haven't been showing you that respect, you now have some concrete steps to guide them back to a healthier dynamic. 1. Release the need for constant approval and stop contorting yourself to please them. 2. Avoid pointless arguments. Show calm authority instead of battling with words. 3. Detach your sense of worth from their affection, finding fulfillment in pursuits that light you up. 4. Set and maintain clear boundaries, consistently following through when they're crossed. 5. Moderate your giving so it's appreciated rather than taken for granted. 6. Engage in a life full of personal meaning, demonstrating to them and to yourself that your world extends beyond waiting for their attention. When you focus on these areas, you're not just improving how they see you, you're enhancing your own quality of life. You're reminding yourself that you have worth and dignity, independent of how your children behave on any given day. At first, your children might be startled or resist these changes. That's normal. People often push back when the usual patterns shift. But if you stay consistent, those who love you will adapt. Eventually, they'll likely respect you more than ever because they'll see a parent who is strong, self-possessed, and fully alive. In closing, remember that your journey doesn't have to be perfect. You may slip up, revert to old habits, or feel guilty when you first assert your boundaries. That's okay. Growth is rarely linear. What matters is the overall direction, moving toward a version of yourself who won't settle for being overlooked or taken for granted. A version of yourself who leads by example, showing your adult children what it means to live with purpose and respect for self. If you found value in this conversation, consider sharing these insights with someone who might be going through a similar struggle. And remember, you have the power to shape the tone of your relationships at any stage in life. You've given your children so much, and now is the time to ensure that your own voice and well-being are equally cherished. By applying these 6 steps, you can foster a new chapter, one grounded in mutual respect, understanding, and genuine love. Thank you for taking the time to explore these ideas. May they serve as a source of clarity and encouragement as you navigate the ever-evolving relationship with your adult children.